Hi and welcome to this quick video about Sovelia Vault and generating secondary file formats. So we're going to take a very quick look at the software, how we can configure it and then how we can use it. So let's start by opening up Sovelia Vault's configuration window. What you can see here is that I have the ability in my actions to create secondary file formats for various file types. These range from PDFs and DXFs to 3D PDFs, step files, IGES, and so on. The different file types, there are different formats that we can generate, and if there are any formats that aren't there that we need, we can also write actions to do these. So for the purposes of today, we're going to create two actions that do very similar jobs. We're going to create a PDF that goes into Vault with the file name, and we're also going to push that PDF out to the network with a bespoke file name. So to start with, I'm going to right-click on an inventor drawing and tell it I want a PDF. And inside here, let's call this a Vault PDF. It's not going to be manually run. It's only going to be run through a state change. And we can control when or under what conditions that will run. We'll come to that later. In this case, we're going to be outputting this PDF to Vault. So I'm going to not publish it to the network, but publish into Vault. Keep it to the same folder as the file, although we can control the folder. We're going to link it, we're going to control the revision and the state, and we want that file to go into a set category of design representation. We're not going to rename that file, although we could, and we're going to keep all the other settings around whether it lines are black and object line weight's the same. Because we're outputting into Vault, one of the things that I may want to do is also copy properties to that PDF from our source document. So I can say I want a part number from the source document, and then let's duplicate that and say I also want the title to be copied over as well from the source document. So that's our first PDF. I'm now going to create a second one. So I'm going to create my PDF, I'm going to duplicate it, give it a name, network PDF, and I'm going to give it some conditions under which this can be run. So this can be manually run, but it can only be run when the file is released. So if I go down, and you can see we've got all our Vault properties here that we can use to control when this runs. We've also got the ability to pick up on usernames of the groups that you're in to say only these people can run this sort of task. In this case, anyone can run it, but it only can be run when the state is released. Okay, so we now have that PDF in place. Let's tell it we're not going to be publishing this one to Vault, we're going to be publishing it to the network. We're going to choose a folder that we're going to output to. So I'll just choose my watch folder. We want to include a folder structure with that, and I'm going to keep previous versions. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to say that this is fine outputting to the network, but I also want to include some properties in the file name. So I want it to include rev underscore and then the revision. So let's find our Vault revision in here, and then underscore, and we'll put our state. So hopefully that will then say released in there. So as you can see, very quick and very simple to set up. Let's apply that. So we've got our two outputs. Now what we're going to do is put a trigger in place to trigger these outputs. So again, using our configuration screen, we're going to go to our action sets and tell it we're going to create a new group of instructions. This is going to be for releasing a DWG. It's going to happen on a state change. It's going to be for anything in a flexible release process going from any of these states, so let's say all, to our release state. We're going to run this at quite a high priority on our job queue, our job processor, so that it takes precedence over other tasks that the Vault might be doing. And then I'm going to put in some actions. I can either run things locally on the client, or I can run using our job processor. So again, let's select job processor. Here's the list of actions. So if we think about what we want to do, I want to synchronize any property updates in, update our revision table, create a PDF in Vault, and then create the network version. Okay, Notice there's a little spelling mistake there. So let's just go back, correct that, and we should find it also corrects in here. Once I've done, I'm just going to apply that, and that is now available in Vault. So if I log out and log in just to read our configuration, and I go to my folder, if I change my state from work in progress to released, what should happen is our job processor will kick in and starts doing all those tasks. So we're synchronizing properties, updating Vault revision tables, and then creating 2 PDFs, one into Vault and one with a different file name external to Vault. So let's take a look at whether it's created the file. I'm going to F5, and you can see it doesn't look like the DWG is there, but if I select the PDF's there, but if I select my drawing, you'll see that we have a new attachments tab that comes with Sovelia Vault, where I can see any files that are related to this design. In this case, it has created the PDF, and that PDF is hidden. We have got options as to whether we hide secondary file formats or not. Generally, if you're working with Inventor, it can be a good idea to hide secondary file formats so that they don't download with the CAD files when you open from Inventor. If you're using the Vault thin client, you may want to be able to see these PDFs, and so you wouldn't have that hidden. But should I want to open this, I can just right click and open the selected document, and it will open up for me. Okay, so let's take a look at what's happened in our watch folder. So I'm going to jump over to our watch folder, and there you can see we've got our RevD released PDF. As mentioned earlier, if we output again, it should archive the existing version. So I'm going to take this IDW, I'm going to manually generate this. So I'm going to go to Sovelia Vault, generate files. From there, I've got a list of files I want to generate, and I could say I want the network PDF. I can either run that on the client or run it on the job processor. If I run it on the client, I'll have a dialog box that appears while it outputs that PDF to the network location. So we'll just keep an eye on that as it goes through. So you can see that's finished. It says it's successful, so we can close that. And if we look at the watch folder, we can see that we have the PDF there. If I go into my archive, we can see it's got an archive version that it has time stamped as to when it's moved it across.